some people were offended that the term diversity and the comment of CP time they felt was offensive.
Well, the thing is, those who think it's offensive, they're still learning. I'm not telling you anything that you
I
don't know.
know.
But
People have to choose what upsets you. What is going on the outside, you don't let all of that in. Or you shouldn't.
well, this is the communicators, and it's free flowing community radio to make the community smarter, to be the vehicle for making and enabling the community to be much smarter than it is, and it's not as smart as it could be based on the system that we've come up in. But this is the communicators coming to you from the Grand Houses on 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, and we are thankful to the Most High for blessing us with the opportunity to be with you and you to be with us. We're thankful for the resident community organization, the organization of the community residents, making it possible for this station, GHCR, Grand Houses Community Radio, to be a reality. And the program does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of the housing complex, nor that of the leadership and membership of the resident association. But the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program, live in living color in studio by phone interview. And we have, once again, with us one of our favorite guests, and that is Sister Dr. Velva Bowles. And I'm asked by my engineer if I want water. I would have to say yes, because sometimes 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 people know what you don't know and try to tell you something in a very polite way. Our guest is Dr. Velva Bowles, and we invited her on today for a mix of questions that relate to health, relate to mental balance, and the first thing is this, that the habit or the condition of snoring, whether it's male or female, and if it does make a difference, let us know. What is that from, and what are the implications or complications resulting from snoring?
Well, it's surprising. Many people just think of it as an annoying sound. But from a health perspective, it can indicate some major issues. The simplest reason people snore, male or female, has to do with how heavy they are. When I mean heavy, I didn't say fat or obese for a reason. Some men have very large necks, or they have a fatty cushion that seems to be at the back of the head and come around to the neck. And that tendency for an accumulation of fat around the neck and head is seen in all male species. If you look at the toro or the fighting bull, it has extra padding around the neck and underneath the throat. So men tend, and black men particularly, tend to have that extra layer of fat around the back of the head and down around the throat. Well, when you're standing up, it makes you look robust. If you're a football player, it helps you knock people down. If you're a boxer, it lets you take a good punch. If you're military, you can carry heavier gear. So there is a good reason why most men or many men would have that extra padding in that location. However, when you lay down, the weight from the excess tissue will sometimes push down or collapse against the organs underneath. So the rule of thumb is if a man has a shirt collar that is 19 inches or greater, they will, because of their body shape, be likely to be a snorer. Because when they're laying down, particularly on their back, the pull of the tissue around their jaw and their underneath the ear and around the neck will press against the trachea. And the trachea is the pipe. We call it windpipe. That's what most of us in lay terms. And if you have anybody pressing down on your windpipe, that's called strangulation. That's called choking. But if the weight of your own body is pulling down on it, you will find that when you go into deeper sleep and you relax your muscles, and that weight of that tissue becomes greater because the muscle is no longer protecting the trachea. And that weight will compress the trachea, and the first response is a struggle. And if you hear snores, it's like they're going, it's an attempt to get that clear, get that weight off. And most snorers will wake themselves. They'll come out and they'll wake. They'll say a snoring and a snap to wake. That's Mother Nature's way of protecting us. It's going to make you wake up before that trachea gets compressed. So most sleepers who have that heavier weight on their throat will be mouth breathers, because breathing through the nose can't get enough air in, and an adult can get air into the trachea through the mouth. Now, notice I said an adult. You should be aware, Brother Leroy and audience, that until a child is 6 months old, they cannot breathe through their mouth. They're obligated nose breathers, but that's another situation. A lot of young parents lose children because they don't know if that child's nose gets stopped up, they will smother. An adult can breathe through the mouth. A baby cannot.
Okay.
So anyway, moving past, you're talking about a large man, maybe very muscular, or heavy set, as we say in the African-American community, and when they lay on their back or they get a position where their head is a little bit cocked, they're making these hard, horrible, loud noises, and it usually wakes up the household. But this person is waking up anywhere from 10 to 12 times a night because the body's waking it up to get oxygen. So when a person is a snorer, the first effect is poor sleep. So they're apt to be more tired, and sleep deprivation results in higher stress, blood levels of epinephrine, and so forth, and that makes you irritable. So a snorer will need more hours to get the amount of sleep you and I can get in a few hours, and if they don't get the more sleep, then they will be suffering from short attention span, increased irritability, and that's just on the surface. The part that makes it dangerous is a snorer gets less oxygen to their brain during those hours they're trying to sleep. They may have less oxygen transferred by their heart, because when you're not oxygenating, meaning breathing, the blood that's circulating is not nourishing the cells. So a snorer puts their body under what we call a physiologic stress. Many people who snore will develop high blood pressure if they don't already have it. And if they do nothing to correct the snoring, and we'll talk about how you correct it, they can develop an enlarged heart. And if you have high blood pressure and an enlarged heart, the next organ that you're going to injure is the kidney. So ignoring snoring or making jokes about snoring, it may be funny for 3 to 5 years, but if you're in excess of 5 years, long-term snorer, you will have the damage, physiologic damage I just described.
Okay.
Now, in women, okay, I wanted to pause if you had a question. Yeah.
No, because you're going to females now, and then we'll ask questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now I was going to say women, many times the snorer, when we're talking about a woman, is a woman who has large breasts. And again, what we're talking about is physiologic weight on the chest, that if she's laying on her back rather than her side, the weight of her breast can compress the chest cavity. And her ability to get a deep breath, her ability to oxygenate completely is reduced. And also, if the breast tissue is high on the chest, it can cause the same kind of compression. It may be at a different point of her trachea, but it still compresses the trachea, and the same loud sounds, the jerking awake, noise that sound like they're struggling is real. And it's caused because of their weight on their chest or weight around the neck and gravity. And the same thing I just said about the man applies to the woman. It doesn't matter what her age is. If she is a chronic snorer and it goes on for several hours during her sleep, it means she's getting interrupted deep sleep, means she's having inadequate oxygenation of her brain, and all of the physiological problems I just described for a man will also happen for a woman. So snoring alone is a complication to good health.
Mm. As you laid out just in these few minutes, what are remedies? And we ask that in terms of old time, I'm not going to say old time, tradition. What did we do with those conditions before Western medicine took hold?
It's funny how smart, as you get older, you realize how smart your folks were. Many people who are past 60 will remember the term dropsy, and that was used by the layperson whenever they saw ankle swelling, or they had your legs would get fingers feel like sausages. That's the expression. It was feel tight and it feel like a sausage. That's the term I'd hear them use. They knew that that had a connection to your heart and your respiration. And many times people with dropsy also snored. So I can remember seeing the old folk prop, here's their term, propping people up. They would put pillows behind them, or they would put them in a chair and prop them up with whatever was necessary. Sometimes they might have a crate that would help them sit up or to help them position. They intuitively knew that it was positional, that if you were snoring, and we even think about it, they will, a husband or wife will elbow the mate and it can turn over. If you watch commercials where they're talking about these new fancy expensive mattresses, a mattress will even know to shift higher and reposition you. So the primary reaction to a person that snores and you love them is to help them reposition, whether that meant putting an extra pillow behind their back, elbowing them in. The first reaction is positional. If you're in a hospital setting, we certainly elevate the head of the bed. If you have a hospital bed at home, we advise elevation of the head of the bed. So the first correction is physical. The concept of prevention, if it is that you have a lot of fat around the neck and shoulders, or you have very heavy breath, then the solution is you need to reduce the mass. And that generally means reduce your weight. So number one would be change position. Elevate head of the bed. Number two, preventive, as much as possible. If it's not genetic, that you have, some women have big breasts, but that's genetic in their family, and they don't want surgery for breast reduction. Some men have thick necks because that's their genetics. They can't do much, and losing weight doesn't help. So if you went to a physician, the clinical solution, when it's not elevation, well, they'll say elevate the bed, and they'll say reduce your neck size, reduce your breast. But the third thing, and what is done most widely in the United States, is they give you an apparatus. It's either BPAP or CPAP. They have all these little acronyms. What it is an external mask that has an operation of pressurized oxygen. It's a motor that pushes oxygen. And what it does, when you put this mask on your face, covering your nose and your mouth for most of the units, you have force that blows harder than what your natural pressure when you breathe in. When we take a deep breath, you're creating a minor vacuum, and that pulls oxygen in. But what happens when you have that excess weight is the pressure created by you breathing in is not sufficient to totally open up your trachea or your airway. So this mask that they have you put on your face, like a jet pilot, that goes over your nose and your mouth, and it makes a noise in most cases, unless you have a very expensive unit. it blows a pressurized room oxygen into your nostrils, and this extra force forces the airway open. Now, that sounds like a great solution, with one exception. Anything that has turbulence, and that when you're blowing air, that's forced air, that means rough movement. Some people can't tolerate it. It dries out their nostrils. They get nosebleed. It can dry out the lip tissue, and you get cracked lips. Anyone who has a tendency for fever blisters sometimes develop lesions because the irritation of the air. So that is the modern medicine technique of letting you breathe better. And the term we diagnose you with when you snore is sleep apnea.
Right.
So sleep apnea is what we're describing. But keep in mind, there are other conditions that cause snoring. If it's a child that snores, we look to see if they have enlarged tonsils, or we look to see if they have enlarged adenoids. And some of the old school people remember that parents used to go have children get their tonsils taken out and have their adenoids removed when they were sickly or real skinny and they snored. So snoring in children is a whole different medical workup, and it's more concerning. But know that sleep apnea is number one treatment in adults when we talk about snoring. And I'm sure people say, well, I've seen on TV that you can get these little clamps and put them in your nose and it helps you stop snoring. Well, the truth of that is very racial specific. For people who genetically have narrow passages in their nose, where I described a thick neck being a problem for snoring in men who are robust, in people who have long, thin nostrils, when they go to sleep, the nose passages can collapse. So they don't just have the problem of a tracheal compression. They can actually have what we call nares that collapse. And when you put those little compressing pins in their nose, what they're doing is holding their nose open so it doesn't collapse. And that's very specific to a group that have very narrow nasal passages. In the afrocentric group, we tend to have very large nostril openings. So snoring can be caused by different things, but it should never just be the joke. It should never be, he's sawing wood, wakes the whole house up. It might be funny initially, but know that it's taking a toll physiologically on the person who is snoring.
So position is the first one. Is there are these triangle type, I guess it's foam rubber that they sell. It appeared to me.
They have the little triangular shaped cubes.
Right.
Sometimes if you were in college, they have these little armrest things that you would study and sit and lean back against.
Right.
If you were in my grandma's house, you'd have about 6 pillows tucked behind your back, and they'd come and check periodically to make sure how, they had a special way you shuffle the pillows. It's like shuffling cards. You didn't just put pillows behind a person. You stack the pillows a certain way. So, position is number one. And we know that because you'll elbow your partner, whoever's snoring, and they turn over. But we kind of make light of it. My emphasis here is snoring is more than just an annoyance. That if a person has this history of snoring and they snored more than 3 to 5 years, they will have consequences that were attributable to the snoring itself. So snoring should not be ignored.
Okay, and shifting to geriatric considerations, and that is you run into a person in their 90s and they have been active in their earlier part of their lives, but they're somewhat incapacitated. They may be in a wheelchair. They may use crutches or walker, and they feel that they have no use, meaning they've been active, but they're inactive in terms of not being able to move around. And they share with you thoughts of suicide, and what are some of the situations that you've run into, and what are pathways for people to help those individuals in that state of mind, in that condition?
I have very strong feelings about that, Brother Leroy. I once was a medical director of a nursing home, and my biggest indictment is to the American people. We marginalize our elderly. We don't elevate them. We don't value them. As you cannot do what you used to do, we say you are no longer valuable to us. You are now excess. You're now baggage. My sister and I shared a conversation recently, and she said someone had posted on a Facebook that this woman was beating her 93-year-old grandmother because she had wet herself after having been cleaned for the day. Those kinds of ideas of intolerance and the concept of punishment is just so pervasive that it's painful to me to talk about it. How can we get away from that? Well, the first thing is just being, the concept of America is young and beautiful. If you're not young and beautiful, then you're obsolete. You're not popular. We don't like you. Hide yourself. Don't come into my environment. So that starts not just with the elderly. It's just the pervasive, unfortunate bully behavior that we see in every kind of dynamic. When you have a beauty pageant, when you have the most popular in school, when you're talking about crowning king and queens on the court for some sport activity, what we are glamorizing is, oh, he's in the spelling bee, he's a football player, he's a wrestler. So our mindset is the first enemy that we have to overcome. I thoroughly enjoy talking to people who have been on Earth the better half, heading into 100 years, because their perspective is different. And you have to be willing to slow down to catch up with them. Now, you heard what I said, slow down to catch up with them. In our hurried world, our young people want everything done on the level that they understand time to be. But as you get older, you realize that time doesn't change, that we change. When you're a kid, you're always waiting for Christmas. You're always waiting for something. When you get middle and you get deadlines, or in college you got deadlines, you're always running out of time. You're always feeling like you can't quite make that deadline. You're rushing, you're sleep deprived. Well, when you get elderly, time also has a shift, and the perspective of time has a shift. So if you're going to interact with any group, you have to understand their perspective on time. And when we are impatient, if they have something to say and they're not talking fast enough, or if they feel like they want to give you some background because they know you don't know about lighting a kerosene lamp, you don't know about wringing a chicken's neck, and they're going to give you some background, and you're just saying, can you just give me the gist of it? Just what is it you mean? You are literally telling that person the information that you have is unimportant. So my situation is, when I'm with someone of my senior, I give them the respect of being my senior. I'm going to say, whatever it is they got to tell me, it's got to be more than I already know. And if you come in with that concept, you start to make people valuable. I think I have shared that there was an active group. I haven't worked with them now for a while. It's just 2020, but it's about a year now since I worked with them. And it was at one of the community centers here in the city. And the person who organizes is a retired teacher. And the name of the organization is JOY, Joy. And I said, what is your acronym? She said, it means Just Older Youth. And I had to laugh. I said, I like that. Just Older Youth.
Beautiful.
And they said, well, Dr. Bose, can you come? We're having a workshop. And they had a number of people to explain Medicare, to explain how is AARP important, to talk to the seniors what is available to you in our community. And they said, we want you to come and give a presentation. So I laughed. I said, a presentation on what? They said, whatever you want to. They feel the people in my group are intelligent people. and they want to keep learning. And we tend to think that they can't think anymore. They can't see. Just because they can't jump up and run or jump over a hurdle doesn't mean that they don't enjoy hearing new stuff and they don't enjoy participating. And I got inspired. And for a while, I guess I was an annual speaker. And one of my most fascinating presentations became a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And what we talked about, I learned as much as I went to teach. And you would have loved it, I'm sure, Brother Leroy. What I talked about, I have to first tell you my audience. The youngest person was 67. And the oldest person was 105. And I had 43 people in the audience. And they had mixed mobility. Some had the walker, some was in wheelchairs, some had canes. And the hostess had accommodated, of course, such as my audience. Some was in chairs, some was not in chairs, but in wheelchairs. So I like to walk among my audience. So I decided to engage as many people as I could. So I said, we're going to have a contest. It's going to be something like Jeopardy. And I asked questions that I felt my elder people would be the authority. And the person, just to cut short the whole story, I'm not going to take you with me to my workshop. The person who won the contest was 105 years old.
Wow.
And I had noted that when the AARP person was talking, she was talking fast and she was pointing to things and she wasn't waiting for questions. And I noticed this particular participant was nodding off. Her head was down. She was slumped forward, seemed uninterested. Then I watched another presenter go up there and talk about stuff, never pausing, never engaging. I looked through the audience and I saw some had their hand on the face and they looked like, you're not talking to me. What you're saying isn't meant for my ears. So when I got up, I started my little contest. It was absolutely amazing. My lady in her wheelchair was like popcorn in a theater. She was hit in the air and she'd grab onto the arms of the chair and she knew the answers. And I was smiling. I said, we're asking you if you can't write. One of the attendants, we had some young students. I always get the kids who have to get community service to come to me on these kind of events. I said, we have some scribes out here who will write your answer down for you if you can't write. So if you know the answer, so she started taking her cane and hitting the floor. Bang, bang, bang.
Oh, man.
So we assigned her a scribe. Oh. And the kinds of questions that were being asked, I would ask, who in here has ever made mayonnaise? And what ingredients goes in mayonnaise? And I need you at least 3 to accept your answer. I asked, who knows what chow chow is? And I said, for those of you that's not in the South, they sometimes call it Piccadilly. If you know the ingredients for chow chow, you have to know at least 3 ingredients, then you have to write it down. So it got to the point that it was, like I said, it became a workshop. I would come back and they wanted more interactions. I started making bingo questions, and it was exciting. And what my point is, the same people that you would have looked across the audience and said, oh, they're tired, they need a nap, or they're not interested in what's being said, they came alive and was very engaged when what they had to say was important to the listeners.
Very good.
So you asked me, what can you do? Don't go and act like you have the authority. I see people on the board and read to the old people. I'm saying, did you ask them what they like to read? I said, maybe that person likes mysteries, and either reading some poetry or reading from the Bible. Maybe he wants you to read something risque. I said, you ever ask him who's your favorite author? I said, why do you assume you go in your reading time is going to read the Bible? Maybe they were never into the Bible when they were young. Why do you think because they're 90, they want to hear some stuff they didn't believe in when they were 20?
Very
so
good.
Part of what I think the problem is, to answer your question, a long answer to a short question, is we need to stop approaching the elderly as if they are children. That they still have a mind, they still think. And if we want to engage them, we need to find out what interests them. I had someone came to me, a daughter of a taking care of elderly male parent, and she was saying, I don't know how to get Dad engaged. I said, well, have you ever asked him what he's interested in? And she said, well, he can't read. His vision's slow now, and his hand shakes. He can't write. I said, have you ever asked him? She said, well, he can't see. She kept answering, but she wasn't asking. Mm-hmm. So when I went to the fellow, and he had a sense of humor, I imagine he was quite the cool cat when he was younger. I think it was 91. And I said to him, I said, sir, what things do you enjoy? I said, your daughter has says your vision is dim. TV doesn't really capture you anymore. And sometimes you have some trouble hearing certain sounds, so music isn't what it used to be. I said, and your mobility is low. You know what he said to me? I'd love to have some good porn.
Wait, what?
And I said, sir, he wanted some good porn. P-O-R-N, pornography, porn. And I said, did I hear you right? He said, yes, you don't have to see and you don't have to have a good hear. He says, if I knew that I was listening to porn, my imagination and memory can do the rest. Now, you're laughing, but what do you think Velvet Bowles did? I got my fellow some headphones, and I had some young men friends to help me out a little bit, and he got to sit and listen to porn when anytime he wanted, provided he put his headphones on to do it.
Mm. And he came back to life.
Well, I mean, when you see him sitting there smiling, where before he's nodding off, he's drooling, he didn't want to come out of his room. They were saying, well, we're going to push you out. I don't want the sun on my skin. Well, Mr. So-and-so, you didn't want to come to cafeteria. No, bring my tray in here. Because what we forget is in order to have a good quality of life, it has to meet what you consider reason to live. Mm. There, in my mind, nothing wrong with this man enjoying porn. I was glad he could be that forthright because it's my judgmental self who would say, oh, that's not the appropriate thing. Who am I to say?
Right. Exactly.
If that is his quality of life, if that stimulated his brain cells or whatever other cells it stimulated, if it made the man smile, if it gave him reason to get up in the morning, if after he got whatever access to his noisy porn, he could speak kindly to people who came in to help him get a sponge bath, or now he was more cooperative with those who were coming in to attend him, then it is wrong not to let him have what gave him a better quality of life.
And what you're saying is that he did become more cooperative. He was more. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't know what his young self was, but he told me, here's something I actually talked to some young people yesterday. The one thing before you start talking marriage or long-term relationship, I advise the young people, which I now advise all healthcare workers who work with the elderly, that before you can do anything for anybody else, you've got to find out about yourself. That's what I told young people talking about marriage. And they said, what do you mean by that? I said, you need to go to a quiet place and decide what is non-negotiable to make you the best you. Mm. That you need to ask the question, what is it I like about myself? And once you ask and answer that question, then you ought to be willing to fight to keep that thing alive. If you say, I love how I'm adventurous, I love how I'm spontaneous, then you don't want to get a real nervous partner, because that partner is going to try to prevent your spontaneity. They're going to tell you you shouldn't try this and try that. I said, opposites attract, but that's why their divorce rate is so high. You're going to compromise long enough that you either stop liking yourself, and that becomes migraine headache, ulcers, cancer. You're not who you ought to be, or you're going to become angry and bitter, and still you're not who you ought to be. But if you know what's non-negotiable, what is absolutely necessary for me to be the best Velva I am, that once I know what that is, it's non-negotiable. And if someone really cares about you, they will respect that that's your dominion, that's your boundary.
Hmm.
And if they'll run interference, they'll say, oh, no. Velma needs 16 hours of sleep, and she hasn't had but 10. Let me take care of this. I'll let her know you're looking for her. That's someone who cares about you. They put what was necessary for your best you ahead of anybody else's priority.
Excellent.
And too few couples seem to understand that. Oh, if he really loved me, he'd come pick me up because it's raining out there and he know I don't like to drive in the rain. And I tell her, do you know about Uber? Have you heard about Lyft? How can you impose on someone your love? I said, that's not love. So when you're taking care of the elderly, how do you decide that if you bathe them and you put them on clean clothes or you come and you spoon feed them that you've done what should be done? Did you ask them what they like? Is there music they want to hear? Do they not want to hear you read the Bible, but they want to hear some kind of mystery? Maybe they like Agatha Christie. Maybe they like Edgar Allan Poe. Maybe they like poetry better. Have you asked them? Well, I went to read. I sat and read with them. Yeah, I read chapter so-and-so in the Bible. You look at them and say, well, are they Christian? Did they want to hear what you had to say? So we get too caught up in the idea of they know best. I comb Mama's hair. Didn't Mama want you to comb her hair? Maybe what you did didn't please her. Maybe you snatch and pull and it's uncomfortable and she dreads your visit.
Right.
Maybe they would have rather had their feet soaked in some warm Epsom salt.
Right.
Did you ask them did they want you to mess with the head or mess with the feet?
Very good. Wow. The principle.
So we get too sure that we know what's best because the person seems immobile or the person is not saying very much. It can be that you who are doing all this caretaking is just straight up boring. Maybe that's why they sleep all day.
Well, the other part of that, not debating with you, of course. The other part of that is quite often they're given some kind of medication that will make them sleep all day.
Absolutely. But wait, you know what? And you hit another one. See, as medical director, the reason my nurses and CNAs hate to see me coming, they try to fix it. They call it medical handcuffs. I'm going to tell you what is said behind the patients and family. They will say, Mr. So-and-so at 10 o'clock, he wakes up and he's just chatterbox, and it's time for him to wind down. Can we get him 2 milligrams of Ativan? And my question is, what did Mr. X do when he was a younger man? They say, what? I said, was he a night shift worker? Did he go to work at 11 to 7 all his young life? I said, so I expect he's going to wake up at 10:30. But because they want all their patrons asleep by 9:30, so the night shift doesn't have to do much, they will medicate Mr. X to accommodate what the facility allows. And when I was a medical director, I never would consent to medical handcuffs. But I would get a call or a nurse would write a note, Miss So-and-so gets out of bed at 3 a.m. Can we have a PRN prescription for her? And I'm saying, what does she do when she get up? Well, she disturbs her roommate and she wants to come and sit in the hall. And I'm saying, what's wrong with her sitting in the hall? And they look at me like, what's wrong with you? No, I know the answer to that. The night shift nurses or CNAs want to be studying for some kind of a test, or maybe they're ready to do something and they want to sit at the desk and read or get on the internet. And when there's a patient roaming around, you can't do that. You either have to go follow the patient or you have to secure the patient. And they want the mentality to be at 9:30, everybody in there must be asleep. Now, you tell me if that's treating someone like a human. So when you're putting your loved ones into care, you need to be aware of what kind of rules. There was a time when they had a vest they would put on someone that tied them to their chair. And they would complain, well, they get up and roam around and we don't want them to fall. So quite literally, they're tied to a chair. They have a certain vest they put on and then tie the strings to the legs of the chair and to the back of the chair. I told them, you can't use these. I don't believe in restrained vests. And I had to also concede that if you have a problem you can't handle, call me, I'll come in. They thought that was a bluff. I didn't care if they called me 3 times. I'd show up. And that made them tighten the ship, because if I'm coming in and find something else amiss, I'm going to deal with it then too. But yeah, many of our senior citizens are treated like a commodity, like a dog. Sit, stay. Time for you to sleep. This one lady and I talked to was in tears. She said, they want to give me a bath and I'm so cold, and they just don't care. They take off everything and I'd be freezing, and they have on a coat. And I spoke to the staff and said, why can't you have a space heater or a heat lamp that you set up around patients who can say they're cold, and if you're going to give them a sponge bath, to make sure that the heat lamp is on? And one of the attendants of the CNA had the audacity to say, well, it's too hot when they have heat on them. I said, well, why don't you take your jacket off? But that's what I'm saying. The focus is twisted. And unless some outspoken person or someone willing to fight goes in and say, wait a minute, this is like a grandmother, and I don't want you treating her like that, because I wouldn't treat my grandmother like that. And I've heard some people say, well, you know what, she's lived past her time. And I say, excuse me? Right. So, yeah, geriatrics is a field in America. We are brutal. We want to treat them the way you would an animal in a kennel. They say 9 o'clock, everybody should be asleep. I think they had one situation where they got a tub bath once a week and they did sponge baths in between, and they would send a male nurse in to sponge bath an 81-year-old woman. No. And she was, I don't want a man touching me. He said, I'm a nurse, ma'am. I'm a nurse. It didn't matter. Who is so insensitive that a person with good faculties who has grown up in a concept that she has to have privacy and she's very, proud, and you send a male nurse to sponge bath her. But I'm saying this is what happens, and unless there's someone sensitive to these kinds of things, the person can lose all hope for life. If that happened enough, in her mind, she's been raped. She's been violated. So, yeah, she'd be ready to die. There would be no joy to her. She would dread having her sponge bath, because here's some burly man touching her private part. And even although she's objecting, no one seems to care. That's what rape is. It's violation.
Wow. Man.
Now, see, no one is looking from that perspective of the person. He's receiving health care. I'm saying, no, they're not. If that person's unhappy with your treatment, you are not providing for them. You're executing a 9-to-5 task. You might as well be an assembly worker.
In terms of nursing homes and your experience, where have you seen a person who thought that they were useless because of circumstances, under different hands-on care or caring administration, they had a complete turnaround and began to either write or do some kind of sharing of their knowledge and skills that enabled them to be productive?
There was a program before. Now, Louisiana, I was going to say Louisiana to me is a big disappointment, because nursing homes are awarded by lottery, and that's going to whole nother conversation. That means if you have political clout and you have money, they will say, okay, Velva Bowes, you can have 10 nursing homes in this area. So once I get my 10 and Leroy wants to come and build one, you can't, because I have that lottery area. So if you are a dirty, nasty person running nursing homes, nobody can touch you, because those 10 you have open are yours to run because of lottery. And it almost takes an act of Congress to get you out of the area and get a new person in. So competitiveness for a well-run nursing home is killed because of that process. But that's neither here nor there. Let me answer your question. I was in South Carolina, and I saw the most wonderful turnaround. What happened in that case, it was a poor, very poor neighborhood. Many of the elderly that were there because they didn't have any other family. Children had moved away or were dead. Grandchildren had moved away or didn't care. So those are the ones most vulnerable and most likely to be victimized, because who's going to report it?
Right.
What we did was that in the working that I had, we would visit the nursing home, because I had a number of patients that had gone into nursing home because they had an operation. Sometimes nursing homes are also rehab. And that's how I first got involved. And I saw how, like I said, 9:30, everybody's in the bed. If you get up after 9:30, they're going to put medication on you. They're going to tie you to a chair. And when I saw this of some of the patients I knew were very vital, I'm saying, what's going on here? This is terrible. So what came out of that, to answer your question, is we started to appoint certain people as, what did we call them? Prefects. If you've ever been to Africa and other places, the teacher's pet or the teacher's pick, the one that they leave in charge when they leave the classroom, they get appointed as the prefect. That's the term. So I created some prefects. And what the prefect did, they were the greeters. They would, if you came to that nursing home, they would say, good afternoon, just like at Walmart. How are you? Are you coming to see a special patient? So we had some greeters. Then we had some who distributed magazines that I talked to some colleagues, and I still do this to this day. People who get magazines, after you've looked through it for a couple months, most of us put it in the trash. I made a canvas to bring them to my clinic, and I would take them to the nursing home and distribute it. Well, my prefects would go room to room and offer magazines to their fellow, I was going to say inmates. So that became a big deal, that you knew where all of the Good Housekeeping magazines were, and you knew where all of the good Sports Illustrated magazines. So they gave them a kind of proprietorship. And you say, I'm looking for a Good Housekeeping. I think it was back in January. Go ask Maggie. She knows. So by delegating these small tasks and giving them this responsibility made some of them just come alive. Beautiful. It was amazing.
Beautiful. When you say it was amazing, what was amazing?
Well, the person that wouldn't come out of the room, or who they would say, well, Dr. Bowles, she's going downhill. I know that she's here to convalesce on her hip, but her hip is mending, but I don't know. She won't come out and eat with the others. She's not eating well. She doesn't always take her medicines. I'm thinking that's depression. So I go in and I talk to her. This person her name was Adelaide. I said, Miss Adelaide, I said, how's your hip? She said, it's no pain. I said, well, she said, I just long for times it used to be. I said, what kind of times? And she told me, she said, when I was a girl and she just get all excited, I used to ride a buggy with a pony, and she wanted to know the pony didn't like anybody, it bit people. And I said, well, you sound like you like to be in charge and have things. She said, well, now with my hip, I said, well, guess what? I need your help. And she said, you need my help? I said, absolutely. So by engaging her, I said, and you can say no if you don't want to. I act like I whispered. I said, there's a storage room where we keep all our stuff. And it's so disorganized that when I get ready to find something, I don't know how. And the nurses tell me they just don't have time to organize it. I said, can you organize it for me? Don't you know that was night and day? She had people coming in because she couldn't stand up. She'd tell them, get that off the top rack. When I came back, she was like Sergeant Major. She had 3 and 4 people in the hospital coming to her beck and call. She needed him to move this, and she needed him to move that, and the nurses were laughing. I said, Dr. Bowles, what did you tell her? I said, I just asked her to help me out, and she's arranging She said, well, we came and left a note saying, we need more of this, or you need less of that. I said, oh, so she's taking inventory. So my lady woke up and walked out of there with hip rehabilitation after 8 weeks.
Wow.
And I think she started volunteering after that because she would come back.
Wow. What has been your experience in a hospice where someone who is designated for their life ending, actually came out?
Well, see, hospice, was really hard for me. And I learned the most working with hospice. I tend to be empathetic, and I cry with people when their good loved ones die. And I had someone that was arranging her death. I mean, let me give you two experiences on that. At Children's Hospital, anytime it deals with children, it's particularly hard for me. We were doing advanced care for myelogous leukemia, which has a very high death rate with children, or it did. It's much improved now than when I was in med school. And we had at Children's Hospital what we call the experimental ward, where the parent had literally signed a waiver saying, I understand the medicine you're using is experimental, and if it cannot help my child, it may help the child in the future. And the ward that just used to make me just beat my head against the wall, they had something called a bon voyage party. And you're saying, bon voyage, yeah, that means goodbye. And usually bon voyage is you taking a cruise or you're going on a European travel. They had bon voyage parties to young people who had less than a week to live. I thought that was the most morbid, horrendous thing, because the problem is my ability to deal with death when it's occurring in young people. So I remember I was invited to a bon voyage party by a 6-year-old that had been one of my patients. And I had watched this little girl go from this vibrant, beautiful, she was a white American, big head of blonde hair and crystally eyes, to being totally bald, losing her teeth. Eyes were clouded over because of cataract. And it had all happened in a relatively short period of time. And she had the discussion with her parents and others, because I thought the team was amazing. I admire people who can do it. I just tell you, I can't. And she invited me. And I was a student doctor at the time, and emotionally I was tearing me up, but I couldn't tell her no. So I went to that bon voyage party. They had balloons and had clouds, and since we're in Pittsburgh, sometimes the Steelers, a player or two from the Steelers or from the Pirates would show up on a bon voyage party. And I remember the young lady was saying thank you to everybody, and she was saying goodbye to her siblings. She had one older and one younger. And then she called me. And I was broke up. I was like, please, just get this over with. I can't stand it. I'm just hurting in every kind of way. And she wanted me to come to her. So I came in, I get emotional even remembering. And I sat on the floor because she was in a wheelchair. And she placed her hand on my head and she said, the reason I wanted you to come closer, she said, you were the first person who was honest to me. And now that it's time for me to go, I hereby knight you the most faithful one of them all. And I sat on the floor and I'm thinking, wow, what I dreaded, what hurt me so bad, to look at a child and they asked me, am I dying? My answer was, when she first asked me, is we are all dying. She said, will I die before mommy and daddy? And I said, yes, you will. And she whispered, don't tell mommy, I don't think she can take it. So at that time, when I'm seeing somebody so brave and so aware, I said, then maybe death isn't what I think it is. That experience kind of changed my perspective. I said, I'm talking about loss, but the reality is it's only loss to those of us left behind. She may be going on the grandest adventure at all. So with that attitude, now when I talk to older people who are signing out, including my dad, I just shared the story of my dad was decided to go to hospital at age 93. I realized the pain and the emotion that I had was my limitation. And now I'm saying, I think death is a release, that our human corporal body wears out. My mom once made a comment when her teeth was starting to break. She had beautiful teeth all her life. She said, man, I'm leaving this place one piece at a time. And I kind of looked at it like, well, Mom, that's one way to think about it. But the point of it is, the body is what wears out, not the mind, not the spirit.
Right. So
if we really want to honor someone who is, up in age and they got a physical thing, we need to honor the spirit. We need to respect that part of them that will never die. I don't know what happens to it. We bury the body, But I'm convinced the essence don't go. I mean, I don't believe the essence dies. I think it recycles or go join some cosmic power. I don't know what that energy does. But with that new attitude, the body wears out. As Mom said, leaving one piece at a time sometimes. But what you learn to love shouldn't have been just the body. You should have enjoyed someone's way of talking to you or someone encouraging you or the laughter. And I don't think that dies. I think that's an energy. That's like electricity. I said you turn the switch and the light goes off, but I don't mean that light is dead. When you hit the switch again, the light comes back on. I'm thinking the very essence of a human is like electricity. When they're here on Earth, that switch is on. We get to see them, we get to interact with them, and when they leave the Earth, the switch is on. But it doesn't change the flow of the electricity.
Dr. Bowles, with individuals, family, or otherwise, who have passed in your life, what experience have you had with their visiting you sometime?
Well, the big one for me that like I say, I can wake up being happy and sometimes I talk. My dad was a formidable person in the family. He was certainly the patriarch, and he was on the job all the time. He raised 8 children. He and Mom were married 68 years before he died, and he died 9 years before she did. And I never forget, he used to brag that he was going to live to be 100. We would say, Dad, how you know? Well, he got to 93, and because of modern medicine, I believe because one of my brothers insisted on him taking chemotherapy that it shortened his days because he started having pain and whatever else. But he ended up having cancer, and it went to his bones, and he was in pain. He started losing weight. But when he started to go downhill, he knew it. And once he said it was his time, in less than 3 weeks, he was no longer with us. But when he made his announcement to my mother, my sister was there, and she's a nurse, and he said the following to my mother: "You have been a wonderful wife, but there is nothing else you can do for me right now." And I get choked up a little bit. He literally took his wedding ring off his finger, put it in the palm of my mother's hand, and closed the hand on it. And I guess he was releasing her. And he said to my sister who was there, "Call the people where you go to the place when you know it's your time." And I said, "What are you talking about, Dad?" He didn't know the term hospice. She said, you're right here at home, and we're going to take care of it. He said, no. I want to go there because I don't want to be in the house and pass away, because now this house belongs to your mother, and I don't want that to be her image. So hospice was aware of his condition, and when they sent for people to come, my sister was in tears, and she was so distraught, and she called me. I was here in Louisiana, and she said, "Go talk to Dad. He's talking about going to hospice. I don't know why he won't stay at home." So I got to talk to him, and he was on the phone and said, "Hey, Dad, what's going on?" I said, "I understand you talking about going to hospice." I said, "You built that house. You designed that house. You laid the foundation and the brick." I said, "You leaving your home, going to be with strangers?" I said, "You said you're going to live to be 100. You're just 93. I said, you would never let somebody sell you short. I said, you're going to let them determine our family was, but let them gyp you." And he didn't say anything for a minute. And then this is to tell you about my dad. He waited for a minute. He says, "I tell you what, Velva, I know I said I was going to be 100. But in this situation, I'm going to tell you, why don't you keep the change?" And I thought, on my last days, when I'm counting my time in hours and not in years, how can I reach that deep down and come back with a quip with some humor in it? Because my dad, if he sent you to the store and you bought something, you had to give him the change. I don't care if it was 98 cents that you spent on that toothpaste. You better have 2 pennies that you put in his hand. So with that understanding, in our last conversation, he gave me the difference of his 93 years and his 100 years. So the way he said it is, "Bob, I tell you what, you keep the change."
Wow.
And I remember that with a smile, saying, "Okay, when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go." what's with all this whining and whatever? He knew this is my time. He left on a Thursday and Friday. He had this big group of people singing and preaching, and Friday night or Saturday morning between midnight and 1 a.m., he slipped into a coma and was pronounced by 6 a.m. Saturday morning. So he knew he was ready. It's time to go. But I think of how courageous, if you want to think about it, that you're contemplating your death. And you have people arguing. I said, Dad, how do you know it's your time? I said, how do you know that God says you've done all you're supposed to do? And he was silent. And that was his response. I tell you what, you keep the same.
Wow, this has been a deep few minutes for Brother Leroy. Man, where my questions take me, I ain't even ready to go there. But, wow. Ending on prayer circles, what do you call it? Prayer warriors. Talk about that experience.
Well, when you say prayer warriors, and this is interesting because I was actually studying on some information. There's a lady who is a counselor and also a minister. She said something I thought was rather something I need to go look at. Her comment was, prayer is a tool, and it's a powerful tool. But we need to know that getting counseling and doing meditation and doing work with ourselves is the strategies that we are learning to be able to use the tool. And I thought, now that's an interesting concept. You hear prayer warriors, you hear intercessionary prayer, but then those who are really avant-garde thinkers, those who are motivational, tell you that when you pray for something, God's not going to do the work. That there is an avenue, but if you don't get up and walk on it, and there's all these examples of how praying opens a door, but if you don't get up and go through the door, how are you saying, well, God didn't answer my prayer? How do you know? You didn't do what was necessary to see if the prayer got answered. And they often, if you hear someone who's a biblical scholar, they use the example of the man who laid beside the healing spring for 35 years and never got in. And Christ asked him, do you want to be healed? And he said, what do you mean, do you want to be healed? The man's crippled, he's on a mat, he can't walk, and he says for 35 years before anybody can get him to that healing spring and the angels in the water, someone else has jumped in and they never help him in. And Jesus asked him, do you want to be healed? And in her lesson or in her discussion, that if you have someone fighting for you to give you opportunity and you're sitting back and watching and not participating or not getting yourself ready, then that prayer warrior can do all they can. But if you don't do what is left for you to do, you won't be able to reap what they have gotten provided for you. They can set the table and you can be at a banquet, but if you don't get up and go get the food, you're not going to eat. So, yeah, I think prayer warriors are mighty. I've seen miracles behind some very, what can I say, intense people. When I worked the ER, I prayed oftentimes, Brother Leroy. My prayer was the following. Father God, if this is your will that this person leave this earth, let me not be in your way to execute your will. But if there's anything you can empower me to do to keep this person here, I ask for it now. I've said that prayer many times. I get someone come in with cardiac arrest, blue lips, can't get an IV in, or you come in, there's been an auto accident, and you're looking at the bone through the skin. I don't try to challenge God. If this is this person's moment, let me not be in your way. Let me not hinder what is your will. But if you can empower me with the knowledge, the ability, the timing, then please give it to me now.
Thank you very much. Thank you super much, my sister, Dr. Velva Bowles. And you laughing.
All right. I always enjoy it, brother.
Listen, this has been one heavenly classroom again. And we thank the Most High for blessing your parents and your ancestors, for having you and the rest of your siblings who are extremely productive in their lives on this planet at this time, and sharing what you share and continuing to help people beyond your immediate location. So, Dr. Velva Bowles, thank you very much. People can actually get your book on Amazon, and the name of your book is
Salutary Action. I tell people, think about saluting something bigger than yourself. So Salutary Action is my act of saluting those who came before.
Excellent. God bless you, my sister.
All right. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And this has been the Communicators on this particular Sunday, February 9, 2020. And our guest, Dr. Velva Bowles. Boy, what a lesson we had today. At least that's the way it hit me, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. And remember, do support black media. What is black media? Newspapers, magazines, radio programs, stations. There is a non-commercial station, WBAI, here in New York, and you will hear programming on that station that you don't hear elsewhere. The same thing relates to us here at WHCR.NYC, and also at the El Barrio radio station that we work out of on Tuesdays. But the point is, black media such as the Amsterdam News, the Challenge, the Beacon, the Final Call newspapers in New York, and wherever you are in this on this planet, especially in the United States, there's a black newspaper in your area. I don't care if it has 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 pages. Do support it. Read it, submit articles to it, and make yourself a better informed community. That's what this radio program and station is about, WHCR.NYC. It is about making the community smarter, and that does not mean that the community doesn't have the knowledge. The knowledge is already there. What we try to do, our mission is to part the waves of misinformation that's coming to everyone, the dumbing down of America, parting the waves on that, and then letting information come through, and you take your choice as to what you want to believe and follow in, but definitely read black newspapers, black magazines, and we'll see you on another coming day very soon on the Communicators. God bless you all.
You can't pretend. Your tears keep giving you away, but you're praying for a better day. Why should I go through these changes? Yeah, but they don't dig the urgency. Yeah, that this is an emergency. Yeah, so make it hurt. Deliver the word. That lonely, lonely feeling. Stuck in a four-cornered room. I gotta get out of this place.